Hello, I'm Jonathan Colopy, an executive director with the Y of San Diego County. This is the Y's Be Well podcast. Welcome. And I today am very excited to have two guests on the program. I have guests from Resounding Joy. I have Kerri Fox, the executive director and CEO. And then I also have Rachel Gant, who is one of the program therapists and I think has a number of different roles that we'll learn more about just shortly. But thank you both for being on. I'm really excited to learn more about Resounding Joy, and I'm curious how the title came forward and how that maybe captures the work that you do. But Kerri, if you will, what is Resounding Joy?
So Resounding Joy is a nonprofit based here in San Diego, focused on music therapy and recreational music wellness. We've been around 20 years. This is our 20th year. We started in 2004. And we were founded with a mission to serve people who couldn't afford direct fee for service. So we actually provide a lot of our services for free or discounted through grants and foundations and donors and underwriters. And that really makes us stand out a bit from all of the other music therapy organizations out there.
That's fantastic. I'm curious about the term that you use, recreation wellness, in a musical sense. And I wonder what that might mean in application.
I'm going to let Rachel talk a little bit
Right?
about the distinction. Thanks.
Yeah.
Perfect. That's a great question, Jonathan, and one that we get very frequently. What is the difference? Because music can be very therapeutic, music can be recreational, music can be performance, music can be all of these different things, and it can also be used in music therapy as a tool.
Mm.
So, in our programming, we have four different programs, from working with infants all the way through seniors and end of life, and one thing that we do that really, I think, sets us apart from Resounding Joy as a music therapy organization is we provide this continuum of care where we provide in hospitals or clinics all the way through community. And so the recreational aspect of things in Resounding Joy, and recreational wellness really comes into play a lot more in our community programming and things that we do out with individuals, not in a clinical setting, and is not necessarily very goal oriented as far as trying to rehabilitate or doing other things. It might just be, I want to improve my health and well-being. And so it might really focus on interactive drumming or music making or using music as a tool for health and wellness. So that's really what we mean by recreational music. And it might look or feel a lot of different ways. But the biggest difference is that it's really integrating it into our community.
It's fascinating to hear you both speak of the work that you're doing because the continuum mirrors a lot of what the Y does because we serve really from birth through the whole lifespan as well. Child watch programming, childcare, preschool, all the way to active adults and seniors and serving in all aspects of that whole continuum. But to hear this overlay in bringing through music and the experience of music, I mean, I love music and I love the whole range of music. I remember, my fondest memories when I reflect on growing up and being in my home. Every day I'd come back from school and my mom would have KKHI on, and it was a classical musical station. And I think partly because there was six kids in the house and it provided probably a calm atmosphere behind all the chaos. And so I've always appreciated music. And so it's fascinating to hear that continuum. I do wonder the term resounding joy and how that came forward.
Yeah. So our founder, Barbara Royer, she was running a for-profit music therapy. It's Music Works, still here in San Diego. And when she realized there were a lot of people in the community who couldn't afford the services, she actually worked with some people in her church to help fund her original venture. And Resounding Joy is about the joy that music can bring. The word sound, we actually use sound in all four of our programs, sound of music, sound of healing, sounds of legacy, sounds of community, sounds of service. So the whole idea of resounding joy and the kind of joy that the healing power of music can bring. So
Ah,
started there as a very teeny nonprofit and then has worked its way up to where we are today.
Wow. And I'm struck by the 20 years. I mean, that's quite a heritage in any industry. And I'm curious just what the iteration has been over that period of time, from when Barbara founded it to where it may be today, and if the populations or demographic of who you serve has changed or expanded in particular ways.
Yeah, I'll start, and then Rachel's actually been with the organization a while and can take on. But I will say, as I said, it started out, I think initially focused on maybe older adult communities and getting people to, we were training people to help us work in a lot of these facilities. And then as time went on, given where we are in San Diego, with the big military and veteran community, that is one of our big programs, and working with people who are coming back and trying to integrate back into society, and maybe they've got PTSD or some sort of trauma they're working through. And then it sort of evolved as Barbara was out in the community working with people at Rady, because there was another organization working with children who were terminally ill or in, I think, the NICU and the cardiac unit. And so that was a partnership and alliance. And then further into the community, I guess the answer is collaborations and partnerships. And that's sort of how it has evolved. So it may start with one audience, but because just about anyone, like the Y, can benefit from music, from infant to older adult, as partnerships and collaborations and grants and funding came about over the 20 years, we expanded the audience that we served.
That's really robust to hear kind of the range. I think about, I have the opportunity here to teach a mindful meditation class, and often I use sound bowls. And sound bowls that I use, radiate the different chakras. And so, I have my little opportunity to express music, so to speak, but just again, that healing experience of just that sound. So I do have an appreciation of what you're doing. If you could, Rachel, maybe, what does it take to be a music therapist? The kind of training and education involved. I understand it's well beyond just an appreciation or a joy of music.
Yes, it is. But I wanted before, I love that you're already integrating sound into your mindfulness. And that's such a beautiful thing. And so I always love to hear when everyone else is doing that, because it's such an awesome thing to integrate
Thank
to
you.
whatever we're doing. So yes, so music therapy education to become a credentialed board certified music therapist. You have to have a minimum of a bachelor's degree. And I'm not sure on the exact number, but there's around 80 to 90, somewhere in there, colleges and universities that offer it as a degree program throughout the United States right now. None, surprisingly, in San Diego at this time. So the closest one to us is in Arizona or in LA. So those are the two closest degree programs to us right now. But so you have to complete at least a 4 years bachelor's degree program or a master's equivalency, and then also finish essentially a 6-month internship, or equivalent to about 1,200 clinical internship hours.
Wow, that is quite a commitment, and obviously it comes through in the work that is being done. I am curious, just so you get this education, you get this training, there's probably some practical aspects of what you do moving forward. But then what is your approach as Resounding Joy? How do you bring through what you bring through to the various populations that you've spoken of? And do people come to you? Or are you out in the milieu, so to speak?
Yeah, that's a great question. We talk about approach in music quite frequently, and a lot of times in more music that we're typically used to hearing about in more education programs and things like that, there's almost like, this is a curriculum, we use this is exactly what we do in these spaces. But in our education programs, we learn about anatomy and physiology and neuroscience and music, how it impacts our brain, psychology. We're learning all of these different ways of how music impacts our bodies and our brains. And so when we go to work with any person, whether it be an individual or a group or a family, we're really looking at what they need. What are their goals? Why are we there? What is the purpose of us being there? What are the support needs? And what are the obstacles or challenges? And then we're really tailoring that music experience to specifically support those goals. So when you come in to look at a music therapy session, it might look like we're all playing music together, but we might choose certain instruments over others because of how it might be processed in the brain, or we might use something because it's going to help everyone gather together and be collaborative or more communicative, depending on what we might be working on. So I guess our approach is different for every person. It's individualized. It really shifts depending on the space and the environment we're in.
But well, you are what you say you are as a licensed, music therapist. I practiced for many years as a psychotherapist, marriage family therapist, and so very similar in the sense of you look at what the opportunity is and how you want to serve and how you want to impact your client and what they're looking for, and then you tailor your treatment, your work along those lines.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's phenomenal. I really appreciate it. What does music therapy look like? So we've gone from the education, getting an understanding of the approach, very therapeutic, but how would we recognize it? What might it look like?
The short answer is that from the outside, it might look similar to just playing music with each other. It might.
Oh, come on.
Maybe, it depends.
I'm
If I'm in the Rady Children's Hospital, for example, in one of the patient's rooms, I might be using a drum and I might be helping them track with their eyesight, and I'm engaging them visually, but I'm also playing music and engaging them auditorily. And maybe my goal is to really stabilize their vitals, bring down their heart rate, bring down the respiration rate. Maybe they're really agitated or not coping well with the hospital. So to somebody walking by, it probably just looks like I'm moving a drum and singing to them. But really what I'm doing is I'm entraining to their heart rate, their respiratory rate. I'm slowly bringing those vitals down and helping them cope. And so to the layperson walking by, it might actually not look that much different. It's really in how we support and how we integrate music that looks a little bit different. So what you might see as an outcome in a hospital setting might be better sleep. It might be improving mood. It might be lowering vitals and stabilizing them, having a better respiratory rate and oxygen saturation. So I think people start to notice a little bit more when they see the outcomes. When you see us playing, usually the response I get is, oh, it's so joyful. I see them engaged. It might be an increased engagement or positive association or bonding that might be happening as well. But really, it looks like playing some music and enjoying music together. Yeah.
It is very interesting. The more I learn about what you do, what are there evidence-based practices to what you're bringing through? Wow, there's a strong agreement with that. And with that, then I wonder, could you give me a prescription for something? And I mean that in all seriousness. If someone is, very anxious, and or the other end of the continuum, very depressed, how might you work with those individuals therapeutically? And then what I'm most curious about is, how does it work? You're playing music, you have your client, this is the prescription. What's going on that creates this effect?
These are all wonderful questions. Kerri, do you want to take the first part of it?
So much. I love that you're asking, because what I wanted to say as she was talking, and I'm going to answer, is that depending on where we are, we will work with a treatment team. We could be working with a doctor or other care providers to design interventions to support different goals. So she was talking about being in the hospital. It could be a patient that's on hospice. So we are working to achieve goals and we could be working with a physical therapist or a doctor or any one of a number of people. So sometimes it's us adapting, sometimes it's us working with a team. But I think your question was about,
I gave you a lot of questions, so I apologize. Take any of the ones.
I think that depending again what the goal is, if it's promoting wellness or alleviating stress or reducing pain, enhancing memory, improving communication, supporting physical rehabilitation, every one of those things is going to have, those are the goals. And then there's different measures. What I'd love Rachel to talk about is we collect data after every single session, whether it's an individual or group session. So you want to talk about some of our data collection?
Yeah, absolutely. And all of our data collection is based off of that evidence-based research to show what is the most effective outcomes, right? What is really being impacted the most in those different settings. So we track things a little differently in a hospital setting than we might in a community setting, and a group than we might in a one-on-one, because we're really looking at different goals and different needs. So in a hospital setting, for example, we do track that pre and post session heart rate, blood pressure, oxygen saturation, as well as respiratory rate. And then with kids, specifically in a hospital setting, which this is similar outside of the hospital, we also do pre and post self-reported. So our patient or whoever we're working with, we ask them to reflect as they're able to what their pre and post mood are, what their pre and post anxiety are, what their pre and post pain are. And then sometimes in the hospital, depending on a diagnosis or who we're working with, we might actually ask about nausea or other symptoms that might be indicating different support needs as well. And sorry about my dog. He always picks the worst.
Must be UPS or Amazon in the neighborhood.
It must be.
I have that happen in my house frequently.
So sorry about that.
No.
So that's something that we also track to make sure that what we're doing in every session that we're doing, as well as across our programming, is continuing to be best practices, right? So if we're noticing some differences, that's something that we look at as a team. You know, what's impacting that? You know, why are we seeing different outcomes or responses, and what might be impacting those outcomes, and how can we shift what we're doing to make sure that we're still getting those desired results?
Great. Let me come back if I can to one particular piece. How does it work? So you have something you're trying to accomplish based on the goals. You have a therapeutic intervention. You're tracking the responses. What's happening in between there? Is it you know, stimulating something in the brain, nervous system?
Yeah, it absolutely is. And the great thing about music, and what I love so much, because I mean, I'm also biased as a music therapist. I love music and integrating it, but music is the only thing that we know of as of now that's processed in our entire brain. So because music is so complex and it has so many different facets to it, it connects to our emotion center and our motor center and our speech and language, you know, all of these aspects of things. Depending on what type of music we are bringing into that environment, and also how someone is engaging. Are they receptively engaging, just listening? Are they actively playing an instrument? Are they actually actively following directions? Are they listening to the lyrics? You know, how are they engaging in it? All of those different things change how our brain is processing music, that piece of music, and how we're engaging with it. It also impacts how our physiological responses are coming into play. You know, I'm sure everyone can relate to, hopefully to Jonathon, as you incorporate sound, going to listen to music, and all of a sudden you realize your head is nodding, or your feet are tapping, or things are happening, and you didn't tell your body to do those things. They're just naturally doing that in response to the music. So there's lots of things that are kind of automatically happening, both in our brains and in our bodies, as we're responding to this auditory music stimuli, which we as music therapists use depending on what results we want to work on. You know, maybe we're working with a senior who had a stroke and they're working on regaining their walking and their gait. So I'm going to integrate that. I'm going to entrain the music to their gait pattern, and I'm going to slowly change it so that I can help them maybe get rid of that shuffle step or something, or that dragging of the foot, because again, our body is naturally responding to music, and we don't have to tell our body to do those things. So the long answer is that yes, it's doing all of those things in our minds. The other piece of it that's interesting is that there's not a one size fits all. You know, your experience in relationship with music is different than mine, is different than Kerri's, is different than anyone listening to this podcast probably. And so the music that we pick really has to be individualized, because I might have different memories come into play that you don't, and vice versa. And or I might just really not respond well to a certain type of music or genre, and you might. So those are things that we all have to consider when we're coming into that therapeutic space, so that ideally everyone has this really great response. It's tricky in group sessions sometimes, however, because you always have a variety of preferences. So that impacts our response to music as well.
Well, a couple of things that you said, you know, one, there was a profound statement that it captures the whole brain. And so really the ability for music to engage somebody in totality is a strong statement. And as I experience it, that is impactful. And so really, really impressed with that. And then as you spoke, the whole idea that certain songs trigger different things for different people, thus some of the metrics that you take to see how someone responds to music. My question about someone depressed versus anxious is too simple. of a response just to say, oh, well, you play this song or you play this song, but you do it more evidence-based on how someone responds and experiences the music. So, but I will circle back on one other in just a moment. But Kerri, you spoke about the grants that you get and the funding. Noting that this is therapy, what about medical, insurance reimbursement? You spoke of working with radio, so I'm curious.
So it varies by state. We actually have a small satellite office wellness center in Indiana, and they have a Medicaid waiver, and the funding there is very different. So there are potentially, and we're not currently working with, there are potentially some insurance companies who will reimburse this if it is a prescribed therapy. And I do think that's increasing. When I was doing my research before I took the job, I do think it's varying by state, and it is something I think that's something I'd like to do some advocacy work for. We're currently just grants, foundations, individual donors, corporate sponsors, and then a very teeny bit of fee for service. But I think that's an opportunity. Music therapy, the demand for music therapy continues to grow. The number of music therapists is not pacing with that. As Rachel said, there's 80 or 90 universities nationwide, that's it, offering a music therapy degree, and that's to become a board certified music therapist. So more work needs to be done to have more universities offering the programs. And then also some work with insurance companies and, government, and try and getting this funded like you would other creative therapies or even just other therapies. So it's a great question.
I think the advocacy would be important because the impact that you have and what you do is significant. You mentioned something earlier about enhancing memory, and that caught my attention. And so I wonder, how would you stimulate memory? Are you coupling music with one studying or reading to expand, comprehension, integration, retention? But I would think that would be something of great interest and something research-wise that would have some traction, especially as you look at our population is growing, our senior population is expanding. We see, dementia and Alzheimer's, and interventions like music therapy may have a great application there, or already does.
Definitely. One of our programs is called Sounds of Legacy, and we work specifically with older adults with memory issues. We're in some facilities. We have worked with people with Parkinson's, Alzheimer's. We have a partnership with AARP. And I am going to let the expert in music therapy talk a little bit about how it works in terms of the music triggering the memory part of the brain.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And part of that is going back to that concept that music is processed in the whole brain. And because it's engaging all of the portions of your brain, it actually has the ability to create new neural pathways, which is how music therapy supports the rehab team and the treatment team in stroke rehabilitation, right? We're building new neural pathways around that damage or maybe traumatic brain injury. So it's some similar concepts to that. And part of that is the pairing. We're pairing melody with harmony, with lyrics, and really making sure that we're supporting where we are from a memory perspective. So, working with kids or anyone who are working developmentally to improve our memory, we might use music and mnemonics and really try to enhance maybe the number of things we're going to remember, versus if we're working with seniors in a living facility who maybe have an Alzheimer's diagnosis, right? There is loss already. There's loss already there. So we're more of a goal in maintaining. We want to maintain, we want to engage, because it can be very scary if we don't understand where we are, we're very confused. So a lot of it's based on orientation and also increasing our relaxation response as well, helping us to feel comfortable in the space that we're in, even if we are not remembering where we are and what's happening in that space. And music can help us get to that space very quickly, actually, which is a beautiful thing. Music is this very powerful thing that we get to use on a daily basis. And it is that pairing. So using music from earlier in life, using music from these places is able to engage those memories and the memory center of the brain, and to have that engagement and to shift. So, I'll have a spouse be at one of our older adult settings and their spouse is sitting there really quiet and maybe confused and maybe really fidgety, because again, we kind of do that when we're really nervous and we don't know what to do and we don't know what's around us. And we start to play this song and all of a sudden they start to sing along, maybe tap their toe, and all of a sudden maybe they're up and dancing because now this familiar music made them feel safe. It made them feel comfortable. It gave them a modality for expression and it allowed them to live in that moment. So I find with working with individuals with memory loss, it's more about accessing the memories and allowing them to have a positive experience and maintain their quality of life.
Wow, that's a beautiful expression and a beautiful example you shared. What's next for Resounding Joy?
It's a great question. So 90 days in, I see
Great things ahead, 90 days in, I tell you.
I see so much potential with this organization because, as I said, we've got these programs and, one is focused on children and one is focused on older adults and one is on our veteran first responder military and one is sort of out in the community, homeless and other organizations. And we have just barely scraped the surface. I feel like, if we're in 5 senior homes, we can be in 20 senior homes. And if we're working with, 100 veterans, we could be working with 500 veterans. So what I see is this amazing organization with a mission and a service that we're providing that is so adaptive and responsive to all the different people that we work with, that we could be working, with everyone. And we're in San Diego right now in this satellite, as I said, but I don't see why we couldn't be doing what we're doing at Rady with every hospital across the United States. And this is like going to sound so big and grandiose, but it seems to me that so many people could benefit from music therapy that I just feel like there's nothing but opportunity and more partnerships, more collaborations, more therapists, just so many things. So I'm really excited to see where we're going to.
Kerri, I love hearing all of that, and really an exciting vision that you're bringing forward. My last question for yourselves, knowing this is the Why Be Well podcast, is really to ask each of our guests, what do they do to have well-being in their life? What is an aspect of well-being that is important to each of you? We like to learn from others.
Rachel, you want to go first?
Yeah, I'm happy to start. I feel like it's a little bit on the nose, but I will say that a lot of the small, short little exercises that we do in more of our wellness groups are ones that I consistently remind myself of. So this concept of like checking in with my body and my brain on the way to work and integrating music and breath in those transition spaces has been really huge for me in overall wellness, because no matter where we go, we can't predict what the things are that are going to come at us. And I feel usually the shortage of thing is time. So really maximizing those spaces of transition in between and incorporating those check-ins have been really huge for me, for my own health and well-being.
That's wonderful. A lot of our work is often said to be our inner work, our connection with ourselves, beyond the critics and opinions of the mind, but just really that inner work. So thank you, Rachel.
Yeah, and what I will say is I am trying really hard to have a better work-life balance, which is a cliche right now, but trying not to work, 70 hours a week and sleep 5 hours, and just so I'm very conscious as I took this new job that I'm going to make sure that I am balanced. So I walk every day, at least a few miles. I try and stretch. I try to, I do listen to music. I'm actually relearning the piano that I took when I took my mom, so I'm one of 6. I didn't want to get into this whole thing. I'm one of 6, and my mom always there was always music playing. It was like a Disney soundtrack, or she was a piano. But so I grew up with music as the backdrop to my life as well. So I'm trying to relearn the piano, and what actually I'm learning from our sessions, I try and go at least to 1 or 2 a week and drumming it out. I mean, even if it's on my desk, like just the beat and the repetition is actually quite therapeutic. And so yeah, I'm incorporating a little bit of what we do into my daily routine.
Oh, that's wonderful. How exciting to revisit and expand something from younger years. That's really something. Thank you very much. I really admire and appreciate the work that you're doing. Anything that needs to be said in closing?
I mean, thank you so much for having us. And we're so excited about what we do, and that we have such a passionate team. And we're just thrilled that you allowed us to tell our story about what music therapy is and what Resounding Joy does specifically.
Well, keep doing what you're doing, and I love expanding it and touching and serving more. So thank you both. Thank you, Kerri. Thank you, Rachel. Wish you the best, and to others, please be well until we connect again. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan.